Madam Mayor and members of the council, at your September 12th council meeting, you directed staff to prepare the following items related to homelessness in the city of Orange. We asked for 5 items to be reported back to you. Number 1 was a review of impacts of homelessness in the city operations as a city as a whole. 2, a review of how the police department and the city has addressed issues concerning homelessness in the city of Orange. Number 3, a review of what the role of the Orange Police Department will be in relation to future law enforcement efforts in the Santa Ana Riverbed. 4, a review of additional services and programs that could further enhance the city's homelessness response efforts. And finally, 3, a review by the city attorney of current codes and any recommendations for changes of the municipal code related to address criminal activity and quality of life issues. Tonight, staff has a comprehensive presentation that will address these items. As we begin, I would like to make a few introductory comments before I turn over the majority of the presentation to our police chief.
Right, and Mr. Manager, if I could just on the agenda say that the public will be enabled to speak. You can speak, but it'll be this time at the end of the meeting under public hearing so that then the council can respond and that we can have a discussion if needed. So don't think we're moving on and forgot about you. All right, Mr. Otto.
Yes. Council, as you know, the city staff has been extremely engaged in this issue over the last several years. Every day I have multiple conversations with staff and the public related to homelessness. Lately it feels like almost every hour I have multiple conversations. It is on everyone's mind here in this organization, and we are constantly evaluating impacts and assessing opportunities for improvement. Likewise, I know each one of you are deeply engaged in this issue, reaching out to county leaders, nonprofits, churches for the best options for addressing this significant community issue. Our organizational culture is not to toot our horn. And in saying that, we have been involved in this issue for many years, deeply involved in improving this community in relation to homelessness, but we have not promoted that. And that has come back to haunt us a little bit, and it's my fault. I will blame that on me, in that I think we've done a lot of work, and we just haven't been able to promote that up to now. You will hear from the chief in a few minutes about how they have been very proactive and very responsive in this issue, particularly in the riverbed. In fact, we have been leading the county in this issue, particularly with the implementation of the HEART team over 5 years ago. In addition, for a very long time, the police department has been the only jurisdiction actively in the riverbed area. In seeing a need a few years ago, we were one of the first jurisdictions to hire private security in our parks and in our library, thereby preserving these important community assets. And it has been a very successful endeavor. We have maintained a mantra of compassionate but firm enforcement. And firm enforcement means not allowing individuals to take root in our parks and public spaces. Finally, through our community nonprofits, we have been a community leader in providing essential services for homeless individuals, whether that is through Mary's Kitchen or a recently approved homemade family shelter in our city. This is all great, but the police chief will cover that the environment we're working in is beyond our control in many cases. State, federal regulations, and case law hinder our ability. Furthermore, as homelessness is a nationwide crisis created by a number of conditions, finding comprehensive solutions are way beyond our control at times. Still, we will continue to try to find solutions. I wanted to address why it's a special meeting tonight, Mayor. At the September 12th meeting, the council did direct these items to be reported back to you and to the community. We felt it was necessary to do this as soon as possible, given the nature of this situation. At the conclusion of Chief Casella's presentation, I'll be discussing a few options for the council to consider for further enhancements of our efforts. With that, I will now turn the presentation over to Chief Casella. He has about a 30 to 45 minute presentation. He has a lot to cover, I would ask that, if possible, to hold questions until he's complete, because, again, he has a lot to cover, and I think he probably will get to most of your questions in the presentation. So, Chief?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. 45 minutes, I'm going to try and get it done. I did it last night. It was a little bit longer than that. Before I get started, I do want to tell everybody that my opinions and conclusions that I'm drawing from here tonight are based on my personal experience and experience of the Orange Police Department and our interaction with the homeless community. As I stated, I'm going to talk about the background, a little bit about our homeless liaison officer of the 90s. We were already interacting and had a dedicated individual to deal with the homeless problem in the 90s. There's been a lot of comment about the MOU that we have with the county. I'm going to briefly go over that in the beginning and then more comprehensively towards the end of the presentation. I'm going to talk about homelessness in Orange. I'm going to give some examples shortly about homelessness. I'm going to talk about resources. I'm going to talk about the Santa Ana Riverbed because we're looking at two separate entities when we deal with them. We talk about the homeless within Orange, and then we deal with the homeless on the riverbed. And it's important for us to draw that distinction. Then I'm going to talk about the legislation that I think is going to surprise a lot of people, exactly what we can do and can't do. And I will tell you that basically in my 31 years of police, being a police officer, I'm very disappointed and shocked at the things we can't do anymore. So beginning in the 90s, we have this individual. This was an article done by the Orange City News. Officer Jim Bergen was assigned to deal with the homeless primarily in Hart Park. That was the congregation point, and then also along the riverbed. Back then the numbers were quite small and manageable, but we did have them on the riverbed. We did see them starting to congregate along in the vegetation and a couple underneath the bridges. Officer Bergen's efforts were, he was a compassionate, fair, but a firm individual. He was nice, he treated with dignity and respect, but if you broke the law, you went to jail at the end of the day. Nobody is different or does not is above the law. Again, as I said, people mostly set up camps in the bushes. What we found out is there was a limitation to what we could do in the riverbed. It's county-owned property. All the codes are county codes. If you look at any of the signs, they refer to county codes. So what we did ourselves and several other police departments entered into a memorandum of understanding where we were allowed to go in and cite for county codes on the riverbed. We could go in there, write tickets. We could do them for camping, for trespassing. And at that time, it was effective. It was, like I said, a handful of individuals. Again, we remained active throughout the 90s, 2000s. Our bike team became kind of our de facto entity for dealing with the homeless as part of their job. It was maybe 25% of their job. They were mostly doing community policing type activities in the community and so forth. But they did go down to the riverbed. We remained a presence in there. But as I said earlier, the numbers were very manageable and very small at that time. In dealing with the homeless, like I said, 31 years we've been dealing with it. We were dealing with it way before I was here, and unfortunately we're going to continue to deal with it after I'm gone. But I will tell you, in our dealing with the homelessness, we found that there's about 4 reasons why people are homeless. The first one is the mentally ill, and to me that's a huge tragedy. Poor individuals are out in the community, and due to their mental illness, they have an inability to take care of themselves. The next are what we call the economic homeless. Those are the individuals where you have people potentially working 2 full-time jobs, but they just can't afford to live in Orange County because of the cost of living. Or they're families that migrate out to California from other states looking for work and so forth and can't find it. And those are the ones we usually find in vehicles with families in them. Those are the ones that we have the most success with. Those are the individuals that do not want to be homeless. They want to accept the services we give them, and we're very successful. The third group are the ones that just want to be homeless. They said, hey, I've decided I want to be homeless. I want to live that lifestyle. And for the most part, historically, a lot of them kept to themselves. They were minimal interaction with the public, and were mostly compliant if they came in contact with law enforcement. The fourth category is what we are calling the criminally homeless. Those are individuals, and they're primarily on the riverbed. Those are individuals that, due to current legislation, are not in jail. Most of them are substance abuse. They have criminal records, and they're out living on a riverbed instead of potentially being in custody. So, about 2013, we started noticing a difference. We started seeing more homeless calls for service, started to impact our service delivery system at the police department. Part of it, I believe, may be due in part to AB 109, which I'll explain more later on. And also there was some activity done in Santa Ana that we believe may have been moving some homeless north. But we found it was impacting our patrol. These calls we're averaging, and these are underreported, so I'm giving very conservative numbers, anywhere from 8 to 12 a day. But I have to put it in context. When we're talking 8 to 12 a day, that's 2 officers, usually for a minimum of 30 minutes. So 8 to 12 a day, depending on what our staffing levels are. If we have 10 or 12 officers out there, they're getting tied up, and it becomes a snowball effect. So it's significantly impacting our service delivery system. So what we did is we created our HEART team. 2 slides, I'll explain a lot more about the HEART team, but the HEART team was primarily, number one, to get out there and offer services to those homeless that want them, get them the resources. They developed connections with some of the resource entities, and were able to cut through a lot of the bureaucracy to get them that help if they wanted it. The other one was enforcement. As I said, talking to some people, I think there's a misunderstanding that the HEART team does not do any enforcement. That's further from the truth. That is part of their assignment also. Resource, and then enforcement. We also have our bike team. So our bike team, as I said, in April of this year, we've assigned a bike team now to deal with homeless, almost exclusively, 100% of the time. So that's 3 officers, a sergeant, and a code enforcement officer. So now we have 5 people assigned in the city of Orange to deal exclusively with homeless. And then also patrol, obviously the backbone of the police department. They're dealing with it also. As I said, it's very impactful on our service delivery. When we talk about Santiago Creek, for everybody that doesn't know where Santiago Creek is, it runs north and south, just east of the 55 freeway, from about the Collins Curve south to about, for where our purposes tonight, Tustin and La Vita. We have approximately 15 to 40 people living in there at any one time. We go in there, chase them out. They'll come back a couple days later. We'll arrest them. I have some information on that. And then also talking about other homeless, what we call migrating through the city of Orange. Not the riverbed, just the city of Orange. There's our counts, 65 to 70 that you'll see moving in and out of the city. There are some from the riverbed that do come into the city, obviously. They come for periods of time and then migrate back to the riverbed. As the city manager said, homeless, congregating in our parks. What we were able to do, the city authorized us to hire, and when I say us, I'm not talking about the police department, it's actually community services, a private security company to help reduce the burden on the police department, because quite frankly, we couldn't get there. I mean, there's only so many of us out there to be able to handle this. But you can see by the numbers, for those that can't see, I'm going to call them out just so you can see them. From April of this year to June, security had 748 contacts in the parks. That's going up, contacting. That's Hart Park. I think the library is included in those numbers, and El Camino Park. However, of those 748, there was an 82% compliance. So what that means is most of the people, when the security officer would go up and say, hey, you need to move on. The park's closed, or you're not allowed to camp here, or for another reason, they were compliant. So later on, when you see that we've cited people in the park or that's one of the reasons we're looking at for our low site numbers, because we do usually get compliance from the security. The parks booked 62 articles of abandoned property. And I want to take a moment to explain this. If you can see it, look at all that stuff on there. So what we have to do is Public Works, the Parks Department, we have to post that for 24 hours, saying that if you don't come back in 24 hours, that's going to be removed. If they don't come back, then we have to confiscate it, And we have to catalog and log every bit that's in there, every piece of that. Then we have to get it from here to a storage facility at the city yard that we had to open, and then do all that work. That takes an officer, if we're doing it with an officer, 1 to 2 hours, depending on it. If we arrest an individual on the street with a shopping cart, we have to catalog every bit of that property, and we hold it for 90 days. What we've had to do now, or what we have done, is we've taken a regular patrol vehicle, and when we get our new vehicles next month, we've ordered a pickup truck for our HART officers, because they need a pickup truck to be able to haul stuff around and haul it back to the police department. One challenge that we do have, though, and City Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, so if we tag it here, and the person moves the property back over there, we got to start the process all over again. Am I correct? So, makes it a little challenging for us, but that's the law. That's what we have to deal with. Apologize if I go through my notes, just bear with me. So our HART team, and I'm talking about HART and bikes, but primarily HART. When we started them, they ride with a county clinician, so she can help with the mental health aspect, because initially a good majority of what individuals were dealing with were suffering from mental illness, and we're trying to help them. We tried off a shelter outreach, employment, reunification, but we're also taking them to jail. Well, we're citing them and taking them to jail when we can. But I do want to point out this picture. This individual used to live in Hart Park. We went out on 52 calls for service for him. 52. 2 officers, 52 times. However, we were able to get a little innovative at the police department. We had got some grant funds, and we were able to use some of that grant fund money to help with reunification. So Officer Bailey right here, who's part of the HART team, they were able to, it didn't happen one day, over a period of contact, speak with his sister, who lives up in Washington, and create a dialogue and said, hey, do you want him to come home? Would you be willing to take him in if he's willing to come up? And she said yes. And so for, basically we bought a $300 plane ticket. We were able to get him home, get him reunited. And so for us, that's a win. I will tell you that we have a couple of those. We don't have a lot, and you'll see in the numbers in a little bit. But for us, that's still important. We got an individual back with his family, and we reduced that calls for service on the police department. So primarily what we're up there, we're focusing on trespass laws. A judge has said that we can cite for trespass if it's down in a creek bed, in the sand, and that's because of the propensity for flooding. So we are allowed to cite there. So we focus on that. Health and safety violations, when I talk about that, that's narcotics-related stuff, alcohol, drugs. We have very few mental health actually down in the Santiago Creek bed. It's mostly the criminal element that we're dealing with. But again, you see that sign right there? You guys can see it? You can't read it. I can't even read it. But that's one of those postings. So we have to post that 24 hours. If you don't come back, we take it. So if they don't come back, Public Works goes down there and removes it. But if you look, this is all back in the tree, so it's not like right off the road. We have to hike down there. We go with them for protection. Hike down there, dismantle it, and then bring it back. And then probably within a couple days, another individual is there. This structure right here, that actually looks like it's a pretty well-built structure. There's similar down south, I think San Diego. I haven't vetted it, but there's a lawsuit going on. The city's being sued because they went in and dismantled that. And somebody brought a lawsuit saying, hey, you're dismantling the individual's house. So that's being litigated. From what I understand, I haven't vetted that, but that's what I heard. So that's part of the challenges that we're facing. We've had 40 arrests in the riverbed since April, and those range from burglary warrants, drug violations. Right now, the big thing is when we go down there, they run. They're going to see us coming, and they just take off running. And obviously, we're not going to chase them, but unless we know the individual's got like a felony warrant or something, we just let them go, and we'll get them. They're going to come back. So in a creek bed, January to August 31st, 177 transient-related contacts. Our officers down there a minimum of 2 days a week. We fluctuate. Some people, call, hey, we never see you down there. Well, we don't go down at the same time every day because obviously they'll figure out when we're going to be there. So we're down there multiple times during the week, sometimes multiple times during the day. You just don't see us, or sometimes you do. Again, as you can see, if you can see up there, different warrants, narcotics, trespassing, a whole variety of offenses. When it comes to businesses and neighbors, here's what we're starting to do is do some education. We're doing some education through Neighborhood Watch. One of my captains went out 2 weeks to a Neighborhood Watch. I went out last night. That's something we're going to try and do and get out with the public more often, seeing the command staff or lieutenants out talking about this. We found, or at least I found last night, and the captain told me, it's a lot easier to talk one-on-one with people than in large groups. It just makes it, people are more willing to come up and ask questions, and then we have more time to spend with them. Crime prevention. We're talking about trying to help reduce crime. One of the most prevalent crimes that we're seeing is auto burglary. 65% of our auto burglaries are unlocked cars. Unlocked cars. People leaving stuff in there. I know it's right. I know it's your car. People aren't supposed to go in there. I'm sorry. We need to lock our cars. I've seen a lot of camera footage. Everybody's got cameras. We have people walking down the street at 2 or 3 in the morning, flipping door handles. Flipping door handles. The challenge for us is when it's dark out, you're going to see us coming a mile away regardless. But if we just lock the doors. The other thing that happened is getting people to prosecute. We contacted 3 homeless individuals in an abandoned building last week. We called the owner, asked him, hey, we need you to arrest them for trespassing. Nope, just let them go. Just tell them not to come back. Well, what kind of message does that send for us? It's very challenging. They're going to come back, and that's how people individuals start becoming entrenched in these locations. We need the owner to cooperate. My wife was shopping in a store here, and there's a homeless individual riding around, eating as he goes, and we're trying to get the store to prosecute. A lot of corporations don't want to do it, either for a variety of reasons. But we need to send a message that if you're going to do crime, we need people to be involved and be willing to stand up and say, hey, I'll arrest him. I'll sign a private person's arrest. We've been doing citywide meetings. This problem impacts every department in the city, every single department. So the city manager's been chairing meetings. We get together, we talk. We talk every quarter or earlier as needed. Lately it's been about every few weeks, and we talk about what we can do, what services we can do, and one of the, that's how we got the security company came out of one of those meetings. Proactive enforcement of the laws. We're out writing people, hey, if you're at the end of a off-ramp and you're out there, there's a vehicle code violation. If we see you, if we have some, you're going to get a ticket. That's just the way it is. We want to enforce the laws. We dealt with an individual 3 days in a row. We had one individual that was at a business that was causing problems, moved him on. We ended up citing him today for possession of a shopping cart and no bike license. Now that may sound a little, oh really, don't you have better things to do? But at the end of the day, that's a shopping cart from a business here in Orange. And the bicycle license, and I skipped over that, I want to go back to that. One of the biggest thefts that they're having are bikes. We're doing right now for the next 2 months for free if you come down to the police department. There's actually a municipal code that says you have to have a bike license, but we'll cut you some slack for not having it. We'll put a sticker on for free. We fill out your information. So if we contact an individual with a bike frame that has that sticker, we can arrest them for possession of stolen property. The other thing we've been doing is we have a bait bike. So we have a bicycle that we put out there that's got some technology on it, and when somebody comes up and steals it, we put a lock on it. We end up tracking them down. We had to go out because of the legislation. We had to spend $1,100 on a bike because it's now $950 for a felony. It used to be $401. It's now $950 for grand theft to be a felony. So we went out that. We had to meet with the DA to make sure we're going to get a felony prosecution or a felony filing on it, and we put it out there. I will tell you, every person, 99.9% of the people that we have arrested, Number one has to have prior arrest records, and they're transient. They are getting wise to it now. They're just, people are out there deciding, okay, which one is it? They're kind of rolling the dice to see which one's the police bike and which isn't. But we're constantly doing that. And it's just a way for us to try to reduce crime. I say Public Works, they're in here, and the city attorney. The city attorney was able to get a restraining order for 2 individuals at the library. Library's a public place. You're allowed to be in there. But these 2 individuals on separate occasions started causing problems, inappropriate behavior, and he was able to get restraining orders to keep them out of the library. So, as I said, it's a citywide approach. Resources. Resources is a double-edged sword. And we've got Mary's Kitchen. Mary's Kitchen, for anybody that doesn't know where it is, it's over by the police department. It's been there since 1994. They serve 2 meals a day, Monday through, these are Mary's Kitchen stats. Serve 2 meals a day, Monday through Saturday. They feed approximately 320 homeless a day. About 50,000 meals they've served since January. That's about a 39% increase from the previous. I could tell you for us, mostly we don't see a lot of riverbed people there. And that's because, as I'll talk about when I talk about the riverbed, everything they have kind of gets brought to them. However, Mary's Kitchen did tell us they're starting to see a little bit of a change in some individuals that are coming that aren't their typical patrons. But as you can see, and if you can't see, wide variety of services with Mary's Kitchen. Shelters, as we stated, we've got Homemade Mercy House. We have one for families right by the PD. Initially, when they were coming in, we're looking at it. I went and had a tour of it. It's run very well. We don't have anybody. You have to have children. You have a limited stay, and they do a very good job there. And then obviously, we have some other ones, and you know about the shelter in Anaheim. We have faith-based organizations. One church is a group of about 28 churches. We had a meeting with them at the police department, and I was pleasantly surprised. They are not into just giving handouts. They are in for, hey, make them do something for it. Make them either earn a meal, come to do something for a meal. It's not just a handout, so I was very impressed with them. All right, transient-related calls for service. You may not be able to read it. Since January to August 31, we've had, these are underreported. I would give very conservative numbers. It's easier to do it that way. 3,000 calls for service. That's somebody picking up the phone. Doesn't include what we call self-initiated calls for service when a police officer goes out and makes contact with somebody. This is just somebody coming and calling the police department on a transient-related call. August went up. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think over the past several months, the awareness level has gone up, so people are more willing to call us. And as I stated to a couple of people, just so you know, yesterday, 75% of our calls for service on Day Watch yesterday, and Day Watch is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 75% were homeless related. So that's the impact on us. So you'll hear sometimes, well, I hear, hey, what took you so long to get here? Why are you, what's going on? Well, that's the reason. We're getting impacted. Transient-related crimes. Excuse me 1 second. I did some total numbers to make it over 320 transit-related crimes in the city, January to August. And we made 246 arrests. The crimes and the arrests are mostly drug and alcohol related. So as I talked about, what are we doing with the city of Orange? Take a look at this tent, and this is the thing we're dealing with. Oh, no trespassing. And it's funny, the courts have recognized that tent, that's his house. That's just like your house, my house. We just can't go busting in. We need exigent circumstances, or we need a search warrant to go in there. So it's, for us, it can be very frustrating at times. Public Works, Community Services, again, everybody's involved in trying to do something about this problem. Parks, again, they're not citing for camping on a riverbed. We're citing for camping in our parks. We're citing them for being in the parks after hours. Everybody, regardless of who you are, you can't be in the park after hours. Boom, you get a ticket. I will say that, we do issue them tickets. They don't go to jail right away, but usually what happens, they end up missing their court date. They get a couple of more tickets and ends up going to warrant, so we're able to arrest them and take them to county jail for that.
Chief, can I step in
Yes.
for a second? In relation to parks, what is defined as camping is someone who pitches a tent. And so if someone's laying on a blanket in a park, that's just leisurely laying in the park. When we have cited for camping is when someone actually pitches a tent and does not move after our first contact to them. I wanted to clarify that. We've been very proactive in that manner.
Okay, I'm going to transition. Oh, so this is our heart team. So I want to go over these stats because it's very impactful, and for us, it's kind of telltale. So the heart teams had 851 contacts where they offered resources to transients. 5 people accepted them. In addition, they had 19 people lodged for 5150. 5150 is a mental health hold. They've had 61 follow-ups to patrol for 5150s. So for us, that's good. They're going up, patrol makes contact. The heart team, they'll call the heart team. They'll go alleviate that patrol officer, and that officer can go back to handling calls for service, and the heart team can take care of this. 366 field interview cards. So field interview card, we call it an FI card. It's just a card that would contact you depending, and we just write down your information, who you are, where do you live, what are you doing here, have you ever been arrested before? And it's just an informational card that we have on you. Bike teams had 9 arrests for trespassing in the creek, and since April, the bike teams made about 60 arrests, so they're just not out there providing resources. They're conducting enforcement when appropriate and when needed. The bike team's done 24 arrests for trespassing in the creek, 8 for trespassing in the riverbed, down in the sand area. Okay, Santa Ana Riverbed. I think hopefully everybody can see the photos. I'll give you a little bit of a historical approach, and I'm going to read you some quotes from this memorandum of understanding, because as I go through this, you're going to see that there's the county, actually the sheriff's department, and myself and a couple of the other chiefs have a difference of opinion on who's actually responsible for the riverbed, even though, again, we've continued to be in there. So again, historically, up until just around 2015, it's been very manageable. You'd see maybe a handful of individuals under bridges or in tents along the side, and then we'd go in and move them on or deal with them. And then right around 2015, coincidentally, after November 2014, Prop 47 was passed, we started to see an increase. And the sheriffs initially went in there and cited for camping, and there was a lawsuit. It's a little more to it, but that's for tonight, a lawsuit, and they ended up not citing them, and so the numbers continued to grow. The challenge is county jurisdiction. So the County Board of Supervisors votes and makes policy decisions on the riverbed. And when I talk about the riverbed, it's, for me, fence to fence. And it's voted on by the Board of Supervisors. It's maintained by Orange County Public Works, and it's Orange County Parks. And if you see the signs, it says County Code such and such. In addition, it makes it challenging multiple agencies. You've got, as I said, Parks, you've got the Flood Control District, and then you've got Public Works. And then additionally, quite frankly, a lack of enforcement by the Sheriff's Department. We don't see them down there. We do now, which I'll discuss, but historically we haven't seen them down there. Families and children. You got kids down there. We had a missing 3-year-old girl that was down there. We ended up finding her, and a couple of days later we got a call that she was out there. Our officers went out there on the riverbed because, again, we'll respond down there because the sheriffs won't, but there's a 3-year-old girl in the tent. 50 feet away is a child molester. There's a bunch of needles there. So we offered, would you like a hotel? We'll get you a hotel. We've got, nope, I want to stay here with my boyfriend. Okay, where's the child's dad? in Riverside. So the officer, and my hat's off to your officers. I'm very biased. I think you have some of the best police officers in the business working for all of you. Told her that you have a choice. You get that child to the dad, or you're going to jail for child endangerment. We also called out County Protective Services, Child Protective Services, for a variety of reasons. There's a narrow scope for which they operate. They couldn't do anything. But because this officer took it upon himself to make sure that child was taken care of, the child was reunited, not reunited, but went with her dad. And then health and safety issues. I'll talk about that. We've had 3 officers stuck by needles that are down there. Had to get checked for hepatitis C. One individual tested positive, but thank goodness the officer didn't. Okay, bear with me. So what this is, when the shelter opened up in Anaheim, several news agencies interviewed people down at the riverbed. This is from Channel 5. I hope it works.
From some about this new shelter, they're not interested. Do you think you would move to a shelter?
I've tried that, and it's kind of worse than county jail. So you know, I like to be able to come and go as I want, as long as, you know, if I'm not out hurting nobody or doing stupid things, then I don't see why it should be a problem.
You don't like the rules.
Yeah, I don't like, I've been locked up once in my life, and quite frankly, I don't like being treated like I'm still locked up.
Now, that's not everybody, but that's a vast majority. And I tell you, from our officers, that's about 90% conservatively of the individuals that we're dealing with now. The other challenges, they're becoming very emboldened, becoming very aggressive towards the officers. So now we're going down there, at least multiple officers. You can't go down there by yourself. It's too dangerous right now. About 619 encampments. This number changes all the time. But now, when I talk about encampments, that's an encampment. There could be 3 or 4 tents inside of that. So these numbers, in my opinion, are averages, kind of about kind of ish, 619-ish. And they do fluctuate up and down. One thing that the county did is they hired a CityNet and the Illumination Foundation in June, and that was to go in there and, again, offer resources and that in an effort to try to get the homeless moved on into shelters out of the riverbed. And they interviewed about 422 homeless persons. The interesting number, if you look, only 31 are from Orange. So the majority of the individuals on the riverbed are from outside of our city. Transient-related crimes in a riverbed, we've had 94. I can tell you there's probably been a hell of a lot more than that. They go underreported. They have, a lot of them don't want to talk to the police, or they're threatened by other homeless. We've had 74 arrests, mostly drug and alcohol related. So when we talk about the riverbed, goods and services, one of the challenges that we had, if you go down there, there's generators, there's mattresses. People are bringing goods down there. I was down there 2 weeks ago in the morning, and an individual's bringing 2 of those big travelers to Starbucks and handing them over and giving them Starbucks. There are individuals showing up and doing laundry for them. They come in, bring a sack, put your laundry in, go do your laundry and bring them back. People ask me, why are people going to the riverbed? I would. I mean, people are doing these things for, and people are doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They want to do what they feel is the right thing. But it becomes very problematic and has unintended consequences for actions. We had an individual that brought a bin full of clothes and just dumped them over, and some of the homeless individuals went and picked through it and left the rest there. Well, now, the county's going to come and clean it up. One that's there is the trash service. The county does do that. For me, yeah, I mean, you got to do something with it. And if the county, at least, let's get rid of that trash, at least do something with that. It's just going to pile up. Makeshift showers, they're tapping into water spigots there, or there's a water pipe coming out right by Catella and the riverbed that they've been able to tap into, and they're getting water out of it. So again, damaging property. Safety hazards. This is a big one for my fire friends. All that, all together, you can't even, sometimes you can't see what's in there. The tents are in close proximity. We had a fire down there about 6 months ago, 9 tents burned. And, you know, we're lucky nobody was injured, but think about that. The fire department couldn't get their trucks down there. It's changed a little bit, but they had the tents right up on the riverbed. And then, again, as I said, not only us, but the fire department have to deal with individuals with needles. Weapons, we've taken guns off people. We had an individual, we had one of our business owners, it was a gun shop, had guns stolen. We arrested the guy that did it. We didn't recover the guns. The guns are out there somewhere. Communicable diseases, I talked about the biohazards, bodily fluid, urination, defecation. I mean, it's out there. It's a health hazard for our officers. So, the County of Orange, their roles and responsibilities, it's law enforcement. I didn't go over the MOU, but let me back up for a second because I think it's very important for people to read this. And I quote, so this is an MOU signed. It said, quote, the police departments of the cities shall accept non-inclusive law enforcement responsibility over district property lying within the respective boundaries of the cities, including but not limited to the bike trails, flood control channels, retention basins, river channels. Non-inclusive, that means we're not taking it, which conversely means it's theirs. Second, the cities agree they shall not receive and shall not seek compensation from either the county, the district, or the sheriff coroner, either separately or in combination, for enforcement of laws by the respective police department upon district property, saying that we can't go and ask to be paid for enforcing laws in the riverbed. So for me, that just solidifies, for me more, that it is it's county property and it's their responsibility. CityNet. Again, I told you the outreach started June 2017. The county authorized $750,000 to this company with a goal of finding shelter or resources and hopefully getting them off the riverbed. I haven't got their stats yet. You have any of them? Yeah. Those are the stats I did, but as far as people getting them off the riverbed, I don't know how many, if any, they've.
I think that's 75 right now.
75. But I also think that 75 gone. We don't know how many, if any more came on. And then obviously they're responsible for facility maintenance and services. We respond to emergency calls down there. It's not our jurisdiction. I don't believe it's our jurisdiction. The other police chiefs don't believe it. But at the end of the day, when somebody calls for help, we're not going to sit there and bounce the call back and forth. We'll go down and handle it. We'll put in our resources. For me, that's the right thing to do. And when somebody needs help, that's not the time to be determining whose responsibility it ultimately is. And we've been handling the calls for service. Again, when it was 5 people down there, okay, we kind of, okay, we'll just deal with it. When you got 600-ish plus, it becomes a big issue for us. So, in September, and I will credit the Board of Supervisors. They authorized the county Sheriff's Department requested personnel and funding to go onto the riverbed, and the Board of Supervisors approved it. So the sheriffs created a homeless task force. Myself, my staff from the surrounding cities, Anaheim, Santa Ana, Fountain Valley, have been meeting with the Sheriff's Department. We've been dealing mostly with Under Sheriff Barnes, who's created a task force. We've got people out there that are starting to implement. Many people have seen him out there. It's in its infancy stages, but at least we're moving in the right direction. It's too soon to tell how effective it's going to be. We're contributing 1 officer, 50 hours a week to that. We're supporting the Sheriff's Department. It's a team effort, but it's the Sheriff's Department's responsibility in my view and the other police chiefs, and so far they're moving forward with it. Again,
Chief, yeah. I will add that was an effort to get to that point, though. I mean, it was a...
Yes, I will tell you that the undersheriff and I don't agree on everything. We have some differences of opinions, but at this point, he's got deputies down there. They've got a lieutenant that's assigned that is working with our agency. So there's some things that him and I still need to work out. It'll probably end up getting worked out above our our pay grade, but it definitely eventually needs to get worked out. Again, I'm not telling anybody here that nothing, anything they don't know. Numbers are growing, conditionings are worsening. We've got, at least we're communicating with the county now. We continue to handle emergency calls for service, but the sheriffs are visible. They had 40 deputies out there the other day on Friday going down. They're doing they're doing outreach, again, starting with the outreach, and if you don't want the services, okay. And they're also doing enforcement. So I got a rough number. I talked to one of our sergeants that was out there with them today, and I think they arrested 12 people the other day. Various warrants and so forth. So, almost done. This is, for me, probably one of the most important things as to how and why we're here now. Impact of legislation, Assembly Bill 109, 2012. Nonviolent, non-serious, non-sex offender people will be get out of jail sooner. So what that means is they'll look at your last commitment offense. So let's say let's say you're a sex offender, but you're in state prison for auto theft. That's your last commitment offense. Well, you're eligible to get out of jail a lot earlier because of the overcrowding. So now you're out. What they end up doing is you get out of jail, you get $200, and you're told to go report to the city that you claim of residence in 48 hours. So I talked to our probation department, probation officer I know. They have 900 outstanding warrants of people that didn't show up where they were supposed to. Shocking. Prop 47, again, it's titled Safe Schools and Streets Act. Be careful what the title says. November 2014, passed. Out of 25 million voters in the state of California, 7 million people voted. 60% that passed. So I will tell you, it's during felonies and the misdemeanors. People go, why can't you do anything? If you have, hopefully nobody, possession of cocaine, we write you a ticket. We can't even take you to jail anymore. In my police career, I would never thought that would happen. Heroin, methamphetamine, you get a ticket. That's it. They laugh at us now. When we go, give me my ticket. Just give me my ticket. So what ends up happening is somebody will get multiple tickets, and they end up getting a felony warrant. But what happens is, when we used to be able to book them in county, a lot of times they'd be offered to get into a drug treatment program. And it wasn't always effective, but at least they get the opportunity to get something. That's taken away now because they don't go to jail. People that were in jail on felonies, it was retroactive. They get out now. It becomes a misdemeanor. So you're out of jail. And ladies and gentlemen, I know overcrowding is a problem, but if they're not in jail, where are they? And I try to be the optimist, but I live in a city, and I hear people talking what's happening to our city. It's not just Orange. It's every city. We're doing a lot better than everybody else, but it's because of this. And there's people that will debate what I'm saying, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's myself, my officers that are out there every day dealing with this. And if there's some people that need to go to jail. At the end of the day, that's it. Prop 57, that went into effect August 1st. Lower jail population. A lot of our prisons now, county jail, there's vacancy. They're only about 75% full. There's vacancies. Some of them are looking, jails, can we keep them open? So it's challenging. I know that, well, I'll get to my next thing and I'll tell you that. In closing, we're engaging the homeless. We're offering resources. A lot of them don't want resources. We're arresting them when we can. As I just told you, it's very challenging. Get a ticket, what do you do? We can't take them to jail. It's challenging. It's frustrating. We're supporting the county. We're working together as a city department. Proactive law enforcement. One thing that we're working on, I think the city manager is going to mention it earlier, is they start moving people off the riverbed. Where are they going to go? So what we've been doing is some of our directed patrol officers are assigned to work adjacent to the businesses and residences close to the riverbed. We're going to start adding additional officers. That's going to cost some money, but it's going to, pretty confident, it's going to be taken care of. At the end of the day, that's what we need to do. So we're going to be putting more officers out there to try to stem that flow and keep them from coming into the city of Orange in a legal, moral, and ethical manner. Community participation in legislation. 2 weeks, I think, we got 15,000 signatures to move the people off the riverbed. What a movement. How about getting hold of your state senator, talking to county, talking to people to change some of these laws? A lot of this is not going to, unfortunately, occur at the city level. It occurs above county, state, and federal. That's the challenge. We need to get people involved in dealing with their state and government representatives. And then, again, like I said, we'll do our part. You have my word that the men and women in the Orange Police Department do the best we can. Thank you.
So, Madam Mayor and Council, in closing from the staff presentation, before I turn it over to actually the city attorney, I have a few recommendations moving forward that will further enhance our efforts. As Chief Casella mentioned, Chief and I have talked about establishing 2 additional positions in the police department to deal solely with homeless issues. So right now, one of the things that the Chief has heard from members of the public is when I call in and I report an issue with some sort of homeless concern, because of, as Chief mentioned, that has to get in the queue with other issues. We would like to actually dedicate 2 positions solely to respond to homelessness calls, and that way they kind of taken out of the regular queue and into specifically the queue to respond to those issues, and that would be throughout the city, not just for the riverbed area. In addition, I would like to increase the contract with our private security for our parks and libraries. After talking to our community services department as well as our library department, we believe that to ensure that more of our parks are patrolled, we'd like to increase that contract. It's interesting, one of the things we heard about at the last council meeting was Pritchard Park. We patrol Pritchard Park every day through the private security as well as the Orange Police Department. What we've done in the past, officer gets out, walks the little walkway around Pritchard Park, looks clear, we're done. What we're finding is people are actually hiding in the bushes. You have to go into the bushes to make sure, is there anything there? That takes more time. It takes more time for our private security. So that's one reason why we want to enhance that level of service. Council, the last council meeting talked about establishing an ad hoc committee. As I said at the beginning, I know that each one of you has been engaged in this issue and talking to county leaders, churches, and what have you. I think a 2-member ad hoc committee will coordinate and consolidate that communication between county leaders. I am in almost daily communication with the county CEO. So from the CEO level, I think that's very helpful. But from the supervisors level, board supervisors, I think that'd be worthwhile with the council to focus their attention on that. At the last council meeting, we approved a very comprehensive contract to add surveillance cameras throughout city facilities. That project's going forward. The first places we're going to install those cameras is at several of our park sites. Hart Park, or Halva Park, 2 of our areas that we've had past concerns. So that we'll be seeing that come online very soon. And then obviously, staff will continue to coordinate their efforts with nonprofits to encourage the development of affordable housing sites and homeless shelters that address the Orange fair share of the county issue. So, you know, as the chief suggested, the stats show that about 31 folks from the river had previous residents of the city of Orange. That should be the fair share for the city, and even then some. As I said, we are compassionate, but we're compassionate with firm enforcement. Compassionate is part of holding our fair share on that. So we'll continue to work towards that. That concludes the staff recommendations up until I'm going to turn over to the city attorney to address the council's request on issues related to our codes. Wayne?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. For your direction, I've taken a review of city codes, and honestly, the bottom line, the end of it, I think code-wise, we're okay. There's one code that I will offer up if council wanted to add. But basically, again, we're not going to, as the chief said, we're not going to arrest and legislate our way out of this problem. But as far as codes go, I reviewed our municipal code along with neighboring cities and a number of cities throughout the state to see if, we're missing something. I'm looking through there, especially in the area of what we call the quality of life kind of codes. And then most of those deal with transit and homeless type issues. And we all have basically the same type of ordinances. As Chief mentioned, we have our camping ordinance, which we do utilize within our parks and other areas throughout the city. However, one of the things that I've instructed the police department to do over the years, and this is because of some court rulings that have come down, is they want to make sure that when they go cite someone for camping, they check with the local shelters to see if there was available bed last night, will they expect any bed available tonight, and include that in the reports. One of the reasons for that is because the courts have upheld a necessity defense to those charges in court. Necessity being a person claiming that I have to sleep there because I have nowhere else to sleep. So therefore, that's the only place I could sleep. And so in order to try to defeat that defense, we've asked the police department to take those steps. We have the issues the chief pointed out with property. Those are some of the, if you look through the cases, especially in federal courts, those are what most of the cases have really focused on more than anything, is the taking of property. Courts have found that to be illegal seizure and deprivation of due process when you take someone's property and don't give them a chance to get it back first or get it back later. And that's why we do the posting, the 24-hour posting, and then we hold it for 90 days. That is a lot of work, and a lot of time-consuming effort that all of our departments have to go through to do that. But it's a necessity that we need to go through to try to protect us in the end. Part of my job is to try to make sure we have laws to enforce, but also it's to make sure we do it in a manner that also hopefully keeps us protected later on from lawsuits also. And it's not that we are afraid of lawsuits, but just if you, as a lawyer, I have to deal with court precedent. And when you look at the courts, especially federal courts, these are cases that have already been decided, and the court said, these are the things you need to do. We can all say that that judge is ridiculous, they're crazy, what can they do? But the fact is, that is the law, and that, especially me as a city attorney, that's something I have to deal with. We can all disagree with it all we want, but unfortunately that is the law. So those are the things we're doing, those things I've instructed the police department. One ordinance that I did come across in several cities, in fact, I think Mission Viejo is in the middle of adopting it right now, Anaheim has one already, San Luis Obispo is another one I saw that has a good one, is what's termed an aggressive solicitation ordinance. So we cannot, it is not illegal for someone, as you're walking into 7-Eleven, ask you for a dollar. They can do that, we can't stop that. However, if they ask, you say no, and they grab you, they come on, give me that dollar, or they follow you in the store, or they stand in your way before you get in, that would be something that falls in the definition of aggressive solicitation. And that is something that I believe the law so far is in our favor in being able to prevent and make that a crime. The problem with that, again, though, the chief mentioned earlier with that business owner and people living there, is we need the cooperation of the people who are the victims. These crimes require a victim. The police department cannot come along later on and say, I heard you did this earlier, and arrest a person for aggressive panhandling or solicitation later. We need people to be victims. We need you to be there for the police department, to sign and say, I am willing to testify later that this occurred to me, and I'm a victim of this crime. The same thing with the trespassing goes. We need business owners, excuse me, to be the victims. We need them to be able to step up and say, okay, I've had enough of this too. My customers have had enough of this, and I'm willing to step up and sign a private person's arrest form and tell the police officers, take this person to jail. And some of that, we're going to need folks like you to tell your business owners that's what you want. When you walk into a store and you're confronted by someone, you need to go in that store and tell them what happened and tell them you don't like that happening from their store. They need to call the police, and they need to be a victim. When the police come, they need to be willing to sign that form and do something about it. The police officer does not have the power to tell that person to get away from that store. That is not illegal for someone to be in front of that store and ask for $1. It's not illegal for that person to be in front of that store and sit on the curb all day. We cannot legislate that away. The courts have said that is not illegal. We need people to be victims at times, and they can do things like that. There are trespass laws that can be enforced, but we need victims. The police department is not the victim. The city of Orange is not the victim. Individuals are the victims, and that's what we need. And there are police officers out there who are going to be more than willing to take that report and take the action necessary, but they need that assistance. And then as an attorney later on, whether we prosecute in our office, or the district attorney prosecutes misdemeanors and felonies that occur in our city. My office prosecutes municipal code violations. But whoever is prosecuted, we need those witnesses and victims later on to be witnesses in court. That's the way the system works. Unfortunately, it's time-consuming, it's troublesome for all of us, but by the showing I'm seeing tonight, there seems to be a lot of people who are saying enough's enough, and those are the kind of things that we need all of us to step up and do. So with that, if council wishes, I will bring back for first reading at the next meeting an aggressive solicitation ordinance that would prohibit aggressive solicitation in areas that are open to the public. We can even do it on private property when it's aggressive, and I already described some of the things that would prevent, but I will have a full ordinance for the council at the next meeting if you wish me to move in that direction. But I can assure council and those listening that in the city attorney's office, we have done what we believe we can within the law. As Chief mentioned, we did recently get a couple of restraining orders against some individuals from the library. We've gotten some in the past also, but in the last 4 months, we've gotten 2 new ones. But just to give an idea of what that took as far as time goes, and I don't say this to ask for sympathy or anything like that, but just to give the facts and so people understand. I mean, the paperwork alone, just to get the filing in court, took us about a full day of attorney time just to do that. We then had, I think on one we had 3 different court appearances, the other one I believe we had 4. Each one the entire morning from 8:30 a.m. until noon. We're in court on those. Luckily on both of those, we had employees who actually observed the behavior, so they were our victims. They had to come into court and sit there each one of those days also for the full half days to be able to finally get the court to hear it and the judge issue the restraining order. So that's for, 2 different cases. That's how long it took for each one. So so these are very time-consuming, difficult things to do. And again, not asking for sympathy, but just to understand what it does take. That's why we need to have the good cases to be able to go with. Over the years, I've had different people come to me, and especially in the library, ask for different people restraining order about certain things. But I've asked for all the facts, and after a while, I've said, no, I don't think we have enough yet, and that frustrates them at times, and I understand that. But I also have to make them understand that because of the amount of time that's expended to try to get it, I want to make sure that when we get to court, we get one that sticks. We don't want to go through all that effort, then have a judge say no at the end. That's not enough. I want to make sure we have those good cases when we go. And so those are things we have to do from our end. We are certainly not trying to duck anything, but there are certain requirements that the courts hold us up to. And as a public entity especially, and public buildings, the standard is much higher. It is very difficult for us to ban someone from a public building, from a public park. That is very difficult. The courts don't do that unless in extreme circumstances. We have to have really good facts to be able to do that. It's hard sometimes to explain to someone, especially in a library, how that person who's sitting there making all that noise, or sometimes it's, you get a lot of complaints of someone with an odor about them that, they don't like sitting there trying to read next to them. Unfortunately, being public buildings, it is extremely difficult for us to try to get any kind of order that to prevent that person from utilizing those facilities. That's part of being public, and especially a library is one of the hardest ones. It's always been historically a place where anybody can come and use those facilities, and so is an extremely difficult place to get it from. So it takes a particular set of facts. But we are trying. We are doing what we can, and the police department is working hard out there every day. We talk just about daily on different circumstances and different creative ways that we might be able to deal with certain situations. And we both work really hard, and especially some of the officers, especially the guys on the HEART team, the creative solutions they come to me with quite often are quite amazing. And then, of course, I don't like when they come spreading all the law to me because they usually know more than I do half the time, the research they've done. They really work hard, and they really are really doing everything possible to come up with ideas to try to deal with different issues. And we try to be as supportive as possible when that comes. But in the end, my office, we're governed by case law, and although we can all disagree with it, it's unfortunate a lot of these cases, especially coming out of the federal courts, are not very favorable to the position of trying to just simply abolish homelessness. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen by arrest. It certainly causes or needs much longer term and other solutions than arrest.
So, Madam Mayor and council, that concludes the staff presentation on this issue. As you can see, we have long been engaged in this issue. While we've accomplished quite a bit, it's obviously not enough, as evidence of the audience here and the information we're hearing from the community.